right. So for today, I think that we are going to be doing the most fun podcast that we have done so far. We're doing the most random movies, as you'll be able to see from the title. And what does that mean, you may ask? Well, I have this wonderful little movie randomizer. It has no filters whatsoever. It's not set to any decade, any genre. All movies are fair game. And what we're going to be doing is we are going to be randomizing movies and then we're going to be discussing them. And at the end, we're going to rank them. This is completely off the cuff. We have not pre-prepared these movies. I'm hoping there will be some very fun Hail Marys and we can just embrace the chaos. And so, yeah, to get us started, the first movie is Spider-Man Homecoming. So I'll go ahead and throw it over to you and you can start.
Okay, well, Spider-Man, as I think I might have said before, is my favorite superhero character of all time. I love the character. I love pretty much all the movies to some degree. I at least like all the movies to some degree. Spider-Man Homecoming, though, is a very complicated movie for me. When I saw it in theaters, I loved it. It was like my favorite movie of that year at that time. I saw it like three times, which is like I think the most I've ever seen a movie in theaters. But just as time has gone on, I think I've actually liked it less and less and less. There's like so much that I like. Tom Holland is a great casting. I like that we finally get Spider-Man in high school. We get like proper high school aged characters. Um, and it really brings in that sort of youth aspect of Spider-Man that some of the other adaptations have failed in. Michael Keaton, great villain as the Vulture, really relatable motive, really sort of complicated villain. You don't necessarily want him to win, you don't necessarily want him to lose. You can see where he's coming from. The way it fits into the Avengers universe with the harvesting Chitauri technology from the first Avengers, I think is really cool. I think it fits into the universe well. Where it started to drift off from me is I really started to get tired of Tom Holland's character of Spider-Man in the MCU, just with how reliant they made him on Tony Stark. And this one, I think, is the most egregious offender of them all. This is where the Iron Boy, Iron Man Jr. allegations start. But I think that there is some valid weight here. I think it sort of holds back from what makes Spider Man special as a character to give him this suit with all these abilities and all this technology. And I know ultimately it ends with like, oh, hey, I don't need any of that, only to be completely undone in the next movie, which is not necessarily this movie's fault, but I think it sets itself up for that. And yeah, just the over reliance on Iron Man, the over reliance on a high tech suit. He's got drones, he's got 600 different kinds of webs, he's got this, and he's not swinging in New York, he's swinging in DC, and he's swinging in the suburbs. It lacks a lot of that classic Spider-Man sort of imagery and plot elements. It's almost like they wanted to do something so distinct and unique that they sort of took away a lot of what we love about Spider-Man and his universe. So a very complicated movie. I don't hate it. I don't love it as much as I used to. I think it's a solid Spider-Man film, solid MCU film, but it's very complicated for me nonetheless.
Yeah, I would pretty much say ditto to that. I've pretty sure I've only seen this once, maybe twice. I know I saw it when it first came out, and I will be honest, I was definitely still holding the bias of Garfield and Maguire are better, so I'm pretty sure I was just predetermined to dislike Tom Holland. After seeing Far From Home and No Way Home, of course, I've come around to him more, but when I watched Homecoming, my feelings were boo, which I know isn't great. That being said, I do like Michael Keaton's character. He's pretty much the only part I remember from the film. Um, and yeah, I pretty much would say ditto to what you were saying, though I know it's on like a grander scheme of the entire Spider-Man as a whole. I completely agree that the I think I've said this before, but like with Batman, Gotham City is often a character, and that's something that you really like to see developed in in the Batman movies. I feel like with Spider-Man, the same goes for, like he's the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, and those characters that are around him and the community he builds really needs to be like a character. And at least for me, I feel like that's what's lacking really in all three. I feel like they don't really build any sort of community might not be the right word because of course he has friends, but like wider range of people that he is protecting, so to speak, in the trilogy as a whole. And of course that starts with the first one. And I am like, we're off the cuff. I feel like if I was just to make a blanket statement, at least for me, of the trilogy, Homecoming is my least favorite. So I'm just going to put that out there. Of course, it's been ages since I've seen it, but yeah, that's kind of where I would put Spider-Man Homecoming.
I agree. It's my least favorite of the trilogy, I think. And really, every time I've watched it a couple times since, just throughout like before Endgame and before No Way Home, I think I kind of like it a little bit less each time, to be completely honest. But
So what you're
I think
saying
it's
is it's not worth
fine.
a rewatch.
Yeah, I think it's fine as a movie, even as an MCU movie. I just really don't think it's a good Spider-Man movie. And so like yeah, just coming off of Andrew and Toby, and I think it kind of course corrects itself in No Way Home and definitely relies more on the well what makes Spider-Man unique in and of himself. So I feel like I don't know, it just feels like a big course correct of they realize they goofed up. They realize they can't make him this big Avenger fighting in space. They need to reorient him back to New York City level. And so I guess they're on the right track now, so I'll give them credit for that. But in Homecoming, it's like they just gave him too big of ambitions for what I feel like is necessary for the Spider-Man character.
There you go. I'm gonna go ahead and have us move on to our next movie. Have you seen Black Mass?
I have not.
Have you seen Little Miss Sunshine?
I have not. Man, let's hope that there's not too many of these.
Have you seen The Grand Budapest Hotel?
Okay, I have seen the Grand Budapest Hotel.
All right, let's go with that one.
I think we've talked about Wes Anderson before. I think you've mentioned when we were talking about what like overrated films or something that we talked about, or films that what was it? Films that most
Over.
people like that we don't.
Yeah, it was either overrated when we were talking about overrated directors or talking about overrated films, something like that. I just know I made a very big Wes Anderson's probably my least favorite director potentially of all time. I just dislike all but one of his movies.
Yeah, this is really the only one that I've seen of his. I actually think it is the only one of his that I've seen, and I didn't like it. And when I had talked to some of my friends that are Wes Anderson fans, and they're like, "What didn't you like about it?" And I described the things I didn't like about it, they're like, "Well, that's the Wes Anderson-y bits." And so I'm like, okay, so I just really don't like his style. It's just overly quirky. It just takes me out of it. Like it just doesn't it feels too much like a stage play, but like in a bad way where it's like I feel like I'm watching characters acting, or I feel like I'm watching actors acting. And it's just like overly quirky. It's got this really weird style. Everything's center pan for some reason. Um yeah, I and this one was fine, but it was a little too much for me. And almost everyone says this is one of the least Wes Anderson-y films of his, and so that doesn't really bode well for the rest. But yeah, not a huge fan. Only saw it once, but not a Wes Anderson fan.
Yeah, 100% agree. I can already tell you right now, there's a good chance this will be my lowest ranked movie at the end of this. Like I said, Wes Anderson's probably my least favorite director potentially of all time. His style just doesn't work for me. You kind of touched on this. He's just weird from beginning to end, and I normally like weird. His is just a kind I don't like. I don't know. It just doesn't do it for me. To me, it's not interesting, and I feel like that's what I hear a lot. They say he's a very eclectic mind, and he creates these very interesting stories. And at least for me, he pretty much loses me always within like the first 15 minutes. And so, yeah, I'll go I'll go ahead and save us some time and we can move on to the next one. Um,
Sounds good to me.
have you seen Dracula Untold?
I have,
Yeah,
actually.
okay, good. I love this movie.
I am a defender of this movie.
That you and
Yeah,
me
I
both,
think
sir.
at some point in the future we might be discussing failed universes, so I might have just done a whole bunch of research on this. Uh, Dracula Untold is a movie that honestly I need to rewatch again because it's been a minute, but it was one of those movies where I didn't see it in theaters and like pretty much everyone said how terrible it was, and I ended up watching it sometime later and really enjoying it. I just thought it was a really cool and creative take on Dracula because it's not really adapting the novel. It's like placing Dracula in real history, and it's sort of a prequel to the novel in a sense. But I thought Luke Evans was great in the role. He made a great Dracula. He would have been great to see more of. I liked the historical setting and the way the lore like mixed with history. And so yeah, I just thought it was pretty creative. It had some cool sequences. CGI I remember being a little wonky, but I mean other than that, I mean it was cool how he turns into a bunch of bats and defeats the Ottoman Turks.
um so this one is definitely one that everybody craps on and is one I will defend forever. I may or may not have said this on a previous podcast, but Luke Evans is one of my favorite actors, and that's the reason why I watched this. And then of course I just fell in love with the movie. As you alluded to, this was supposed to be the start of a specific universe, and I really wish it had, just that way I could have been able to see more Luke Evans, because I did enjoy the character. I enjoyed the story. I thought Dominic Cooper's was a good villain. Um, and yeah, this is really, even if it's just to bring back my statement that I always say, there are good movies and there are fun movies. For me personally, I think this is both. But even if you're somebody who may deem the story to be subpar, I think it's still a fun movie that you could enjoy on a Sunday evening or whatever.
Yeah, I remember this movie just having a really cool aesthetic, like his armor with like dragon imagery on it. It's like him being the Dracula, the dragon, or whatever it means in like Romanian, and just like really cool imagery with like the bats and how they picture the vampires and having like a really good tone. So I feel like they nailed a lot of those aspects.
Definitely. And if you are somebody who just is anti-vampire, I would recommend Dracula Untold as like a movie to maybe get you into vampire type movies. I know a lot of people just kind of say, "Up, Twilight happened. I don't like vampires anymore," which is fair, but there's a lot of other really good vampire stuff. Dracula Untold would be at the top of my list for recommendations.
Right.
Um,
What's next?
Next is John Tucker Must Die.
I have not seen that.
Ooh, okay. Next is The Ring.
Is this the, I guess, is The Ring the American one?
Yes, with Naomi Watts.
Okay. Yes, I actually saw this for the first time this past summer. So I had seen Ringu, the Japanese version, and then I read the book. It's a Japanese book by Japanese horror author Koji Suzuki. The book is really good, and I read the book, and so I went to watch the American remake, this one that we're discussing here, and I did not like it. It is a very loose adaptation of the book, and this is sounding super cliche, but like basically everything they changed was for the worse, in my opinion. Now, I think the movie, if I had watched it completely on its own, I might have liked more, but the book was just really good and had a really solid story, and they just changed so much about it and about the lore that it kind of just like irked me the whole time. And the whole time I just kept thinking, okay, well, the book did that better. The book did that better. So I kind of had a hard time that, you know, differentiating between the two. And also, I didn't realize it was like PG-13, and this has been hyped up for me. I don't know if it was just super scary when it came out in like 2002, but so many people had hyped this up. It's like, oh, this is like one of the scariest movies ever. This is one of the scariest movies ever. And I watched it, and it's PG-13, I'm pretty sure, so that should already tell you. Not that PG-13 horror can't be scary, but typically, they won't go as scary as they would if they were R-rated. And I just was not impressed with any of the scares, to be completely honest. Even like the final scare, the iconic, I guess spoiler alert for a movie that came out 22 years ago that everyone knows, like the whole coming out of the TV thing. I felt like that was way overhyped, and actually watching it um just didn't meet my expectations. So it was definitely an issue of expectations. So some of that's on me, but I really did not like this one at all.
Yeah, no, that's completely fair. I feel like with a lot of stuff, there's often two things that kind of compete, and what I mean by that is, at this time with the American remakes, there was The Ring and there was The Grudge, and for me personally, I was always a Grudge person. I find that movie to be much scarier. Uh, I have seen Ringu, the original movie adaptation, I should say, and I personally like that better than the American remake. I have not read the book. I have heard it's good. Um, for like nostalgia purposes and the fact that it is so iconic, I will probably end up ranking this higher than some of the other stuff we've talked about, but I'm pretty much in the same vein as you are. Um, I think objectively speaking, I agree with you that PG-13 doesn't necessarily mean that the horror movie is going to be bad. However, from my own personal perspective, if it's a PG-13 horror movie, it normally doesn't end well for me. I tend to like it less because of how they do the horror, and so I kind of like a hard R on my horror movies, but I know that's more personal preference.
Even the Ringu movie doesn't isn't a faithful adaptation of the book. It like changes up a whole lot itself, just less so. And it's not even the fact that it's not even the fact that it's like an American story. Like I didn't even mind that they placed it in America, but just the basic plot beats and even like characters at a basic level all are different.
Yeah, that's fair. I would say I like it a little bit more than you, but that's probably just because I haven't read the book. Um, Moving on to our next one, I know you've seen this. It's Anchorman: The Legend of Ron Burgundy.
Okay, so I have reflected how Will Ferrell is probably actually no, not probably. He is my favorite comedic actor. I'm a huge fan of his movies and his style. Kind of a hot take here. I really think Anchorman is not one of his strongest films. I really I think it has obviously very quotable moments, has some very funny lines. It has, very iconic memes, but whenever I am like in the mood for a Will Ferrell movie, this is never one of the ones that I go to. I don't know, something about it, it just doesn't feel as memorable. It doesn't feel like it sticks with me as much as, the memes stick with me because I see them in different contexts more often. But like, I never find myself wanting to watch this one. And I don't know, it might just be like a bias thing because like even growing up watching Will Ferrell movies, this was never one I really watched. Um, so I think it just kind of created that natural bias in me. But I mean, I think it's got funny moments. Like I said, a lot of it's iconic. It made great meme material. There are some genuinely funny lines, but like I just always put some of his other movies a lot higher than this one.
Okay, no, that's perfectly fair. As you know, I'm not a Will Ferrell fan. So uh, I first saw this movie about a year ago. It's of course heralded as one of like the greatest comedies of the 2000s, and I just hadn't seen it. And I try to watch the movies that at least are like so legendary that everybody has to see them. And I also didn't like it. There are some funny lines, don't get me wrong, but generally speaking, this just kind of embodied a lot of the stuff I don't like about Will Ferrell. So that's kind of my take. It sounds like we're at least in agreement, even if we have differing opinions on Ferrell as an actor.
Yeah, like I would watch Talladega Nights 100 times out of 100 before I watched Anchorman.
And see, I would do the same. I think I mentioned before, if I was to pick like a Will Ferrell centric movie, because I would say Other Guys has more of a Mark Wahlberg focus with Ferrell, so I don't know if that counts. I remember really liking Kicking and Screaming when I was a kid, and even Talladega Nights. So I would watch any of this.
Completely
um,
agree.
the next one is Air Bud. Have you seen that?
Maybe when I was like a kid, but honestly, I don't remember any of it.
No worries. I will continue the randomizer. Dr. Seuss's How the Grinch Stole Christmas, the original like 1960s one.
I mean, yeah, I've seen that. I have talked about before how The Grinch, the Illumination one, is like my favorite is one of my favorite Christmas movies of all time. It is my favorite Grinch adaptation by far. I mean, this original, it's like you can't really criticize it because, it's so iconic and there's that nostalgia factor, but like I guess just like it's one that I will gravitate towards the least because it's like barely an hour. It's got that really old animation style. It's more of just a straightforward adaptation of the book, which obviously being a Dr. Seuss book doesn't have the most content to give. So like I respect it for what it is, but it's never one I feel like I'm gonna like seek out to watch even at Christmas time unless I don't know, it was just watching with my parents for like purely nostalgia reasons or something.
No, that's completely fair. I know we did a Christmas podcast, and I'm sure I mentioned this. Excuse me, when you mentioned the Benedict Cumberbatch one, but I watch this every year because my mom loves it. It's not my favorite Christmas one, but like you said, it's so iconic. You kind of have to give it its props. I love Boris Karloff, so I like that. His voice will forever be lent to this, and I love singing the song. I'll be perfectly honest. I feel like the main reason why I like watching the movie is because I get to sing along, and that's just fun. So that this is more or less
This
just a fun movie.
the song is so like not morbid, but it's like so mean when you like really think about it. I didn't like as a kid, you just think, oh ha ha ha, that's so funny. And then you hear the lyrics now and you're like, it's a pretty mean song.
Yeah, no, it's definitely interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah, especially for a kids movie. Um,
exactly.
so the next one is The Hunger Games.
Okay. The first one.
Yeah.
Okay, I have seen this movie only once in my life, and it was all the way in theaters back in 2012. I was never a Hunger Games kid. I know I was like, I guess both we were like peak age games because we were like 13, like between like 11 and 13 when these books came out and the movies came out. And yeah, it just never grabbed me the way like say Percy Jackson did. So I read the books and I thought they were fine. I was never like super into them, even when I was like the perfect age. And I remember seeing this one in theaters and thinking it was all right and just not being interested enough to check out any of the sequels. So I only saw this one and only that one time. So I can't say too much about it because it has been so long and I was never particularly into it. But yeah, just a franchise that never really grabbed me.
Yeah, this I would have to agree. When I was a kid, I always read books that just never got adapted into movies. So it was always like are they ever going to adapt any of my series? Of course, you had Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, Twilight, Hunger Games. Like you said, we we were in the prime of book movie adaptations, and then I feel like they've at least the like YA stuff has pretty much. I don't want to say yeah, I would actually no, I would say it's pretty much died down. I feel like the Maze Runner and the Divergent was probably like the last of the we're going to take these YA novels and try and put them on the screen. You could disagree with that, but I feel like we lived through the prime of it. I know that the Hunger Games was absolutely influential for the resurgence of the archery business. So it did a lot of good things in that respect. But other than that, I agree with you. I was not really a big fan of this. I know it's not supposed to be a horror movie. I know it's more action, but given its themes, I remember specifically wishing it was a little more R-rated, so to speak. I think that was my main. Other than me just not finding it interesting, I think the story itself has some cool ideas, and I just would have liked it more R-rated. Is probably my only thing I really remember. But same as you, I've seen it once and when it was in theaters.
So what you're saying is you like Battle Royale.
I do.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, even I'm not going to try to act all high and mighty here when I say this, but even like as a young adult, I didn't like young adult books. I was always reading just like adult books. So like even when I was that age, I just never gravitated towards YA. With the exception of Percy Jackson. That was like my
I was
franchise that I
about to
loved.
say.
But yeah, I never read Divergent. I never read Maze Runner. I never read I did read the Harry Potter books once. But yeah, I just never was really into YA. So I think that just contributed. And like I said, I only saw this movie. I never saw the sequels.
No, that's perfectly fair. I was reading manga and comic books primarily. Diary of a Wimpy Kid. Uh, and then my
High,
dad.
highbrow classic literature right there.
My dad, when it got to the point where he noticed I was a reader, he was giving me his favorite books. So like Jack Reacher, Jack Ryan, the Vince Flynn stuff. So same as you. I like jumped straight to adult books. The only YA one I read was the Mortal Engine series. So I was so hyped when Peter Jackson was doing that, and then it bombed, and I was just so upset. Because there's like eight
I never
books, and there's so much to develop with it, and the world would have been awesome.
I never read those or saw the movie, but I also heard very similar things with the movie.
It was a classic case of we want to create a world, so let's just shove a bunch in this movie, but then we're going to leave it super open so that the audience wants more, but instead they're just like, what the heck did I just watch? And they feel empty inside, and then they rate it a 0% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Nice.
So the next movie is Batman Begins.
Okay. All right. Um, yeah, Batman Begins. Let's see, I'm trying to think of just what we've talked about before. Yeah, Batman Begins is I it's not as mixed for me as Spider-Man Homecoming is, but it is still a little bit mixed for me. I Yeah, Nolan's whole interpretation of Batman, we've covered this before. My biggest hot take, one of them at least, I have plenty, is just Christian Bale, Christopher Nolan's take on Batman is not my favorite. It's not true to what I like in the character. And Batman Begins, I think, does a better job at telling a more conventional Batman story than, say, The Dark Knight, where I feel like Nolan starts to interfere too much with the Batman mythos and character. But Begins is solid, very much a Bruce Wayne, the movie kind of thing. Not very much of a Batman movie, but that's fine. It's an origin story. Um, yeah, I mean, I love Liam Neeson as Ra's al Ghul. I like Cillian Murphy as Scarecrow. I do think Christian Bale is a good casting. I like the suit in this one before it gets like overly armored and segmented in future adaptations. So yeah, it's a truer Batman story, very much a Bruce Wayne story. It's a little slow, and that's something that I realized when I rewatched it again this past summer in preparation for Oppenheimer. When I was going through Nolan's filmography, it was a lot slower than I remembered and a lot longer than I remembered. So I definitely think there could have been some stuff to sort of trim the fat a little bit and add a little bit more, I guess, action in there. But I get what Nolan was going for. I just don't feel like it was very clearly an origin story for better and for worse, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely makes sense. I think I've said this in the podcast before. I know I've said this to you. The more I watch these movies, the more I like them. Like when I first saw them in theaters, okay, I like Batman. They were cool enough. But then the more I watch these, I feel like I like them at just infinitely more. As you know, I personally believe that all 8.5 hours of the Dark Knight trilogy should be watched together as one movie, and then that movie is one of the best movies in my personal opinion. However, if I have to pick one of the trilogy, I personally feel like Batman Begins is the best, or at least it's my favorite. I know everybody says Dark Knight's the best. I think I've gone on record saying I put that in third out of the trilogy. Once again, all very good. It's not like I'm putting it in third and giving it a 1 star. But for me personally, Batman Begins is my personal favorite, and I think it is the best as far as when you like. I remember when I was doing this ranking, it was really hard because I think they're all great. So I was trying to do cohesive story versus character versus versus villain versus characters versus development and all that jazz. And uh, uh, for every fault that each of the three movies have, and I had to pick like which ones would I weigh over what, and I just give Batman Begins the ever so slightest edge. Even though, and I will totally go on record saying this, I think Rachel is one of the worst characters in a movie ever, and I hate her, and I'm so glad she dies in Dark Knight. So that gives Dark Knight a plus for me. But for me personally, I really like this movie. I always enjoy rewatching it. I don't. It sounds like I give it a little bit higher of a rating than you do, but yeah, that's where I stand on those.
Yeah, I think Rachel is a very uninteresting love interest. Um, yeah, I think she's a very uninteresting love interest, but I do, like I said, this feels the most Batman-y. I feel like the most true to that sort of comic booky feel of the trilogy.
Mhm.
And so that's definitely something that I appreciate. And one thing I will give to this credit is it made Gotham feel like a comic book city where it's like grimy and industrial and rusty. And then they kind of just completely got rid of that in The Dark Knight and Dark Knight Rises. Like Batman Begins, they filmed on sets to make Gotham look this way. And then Christopher Nolan was like, you know what? Let's just make it the business district of Chicago, where there's like nice skyscrapers and it's like a normal looking city.
It's like I
So
was
I'll give
saying
it credit.
earlier. Oh, sorry, you finish.
No, I was just gonna say I give it credit for like making Gotham feel like a real place.
It's like I was saying earlier, Gotham is one of the biggest characters in the Batman comics, and so when movies actually give the city life, it just goes that much farther. Um,
Yes,
have you
exactly.
seen the movie Jolt?
I don't even know what that is.
Okay, it's a Kate Beckinsale action movie. I will pass through. Let's see what is next. All right, we're getting a run here of stuff that I have not seen. I couldn't even tell you what some of these movies are. um, doo. I am so sorry. This is oh my God, they're like going way back. Okay, I didn't see that.
I can rant some more on Batman Begins to
I was about to say, so who's your favorite Batman? I'm just kidding.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. I like all
oh,
the
there
other
we go.
castings too. Okay, we have
Um,
another one. All right.
yes, Final Destination 5. I know you've seen that one.
Oh, actually, I have not.
Oh, you haven't seen the fifth
I've
one?
o- I've seen I think 1 through 3. 3 is the roller coaster, right?
Yes, and then 4 is the
I,
NASCAR track or race car track, excuse me.
I have only seen 1 through 3. However, I do plan on watching all 5 this spooky season.
I was about to say, hot take. And it could be nostalgia, but at least for kills alone, I think the fifth movie is the best. I'll just add that in because I've seen it for people who are curious. Hot take, I think the fifth movie is the best of them all. I get that the first one's the iconic classic, but especially given the creativity of the kills, like Final Destination 5 had me not wanting to leave my house, and that's really hard for a movie to do, so I give it a lot of props.
I really like the first one, and even the sequels I think are good. But yeah, I have not seen all 5 yet, unfortunately. But I will be remedying that later this October.
I know it kind of came pre-Saw, but it definitely gives me Saw vibes, especially in the sequels where it becomes more of the stereotypical how crazily can we kill people.
I agree.
Um so have you seen the live action 101 Dalmatians with Glenn Close?
Maybe a long time ago, but I honestly don't remember it at all.
All right, no worries. I will just keep on
Yeah,
randomizing. Ooh, have you seen America the Motion Picture?
I no, I have not. I don't know what
Okay.
that is.
That one
This is
is
just
a
this is off the cuff, people. This is what you get.
I was about to say you have to
It's how you know it's real.
there you go. We didn't edit anything. Um have you seen Dougal? It's an
I don't know what
animated
that
movie
is.
from our childhood. Okay, no worries. Um, There's no way you've seen this one. Have you seen Thunderstruck?
No, I've heard of the AC/DC song.
Okay, yeah, that's when Kevin Durant tried acting. It did not go well.
Really?
Uh, okay. Have you seen the Christopher Reeve Superman 2?
I have.
Okay, so we can at least.
So, yeah, I've never been much of a Superman fan. I've mentioned before how Henry Cavill was really the first Superman that I really like latched onto and liked the character. So I had never seen the Christopher Reeve movies until I think it was 2021. I think it was only a couple years ago. I watched Superman the motion picture, Superman 2, at least the Richard Donner cut. I know it's very different from the theatrical cut. I've never seen the theatrical cut. I just saw the Richard Donner cut. And then I saw Superman Returns, and those were all three for the first time. They were all right. They were definitely very dated. I completely respect what these movies did for the superhero genre. Like even before Batman '89, like Superman the motion picture, and then this next like Superman 2, like Christopher Reeve really trailblazed. people taking Superman seriously, and superheroes seriously and the genre seriously. So I give them immense respect, but watching them for the first time as like a 20 something in the 2020s, a lot of it just didn't age well. They're very slow. They got really bad special effects, which, not holding it really against it, I know it was probably revolutionary for their time. It's just it kind of takes you back a little bit when you watch it for the first time so late. And like 40 years after the fact. But I did like Superman 2 better than Superman the motion picture. I thought their version of Zod was a really good villain. He's just like a classic, just like super evil guy, um, who is just who's out to just complete his mission and get his goal done, and at whatever cost. And kneel before Zod is an iconic quote. They were dressed a little weird, definitely a little 80s, with like V-neck, skin tight, black, whatever leather they are wearing. But other than that, yeah, I mean, it's a solid movie, very instrumental to the comic book genre, but honestly, not anything I would put even in like a top 20, top 30 plus comic book movies of all time.
Yeah, I would say I pretty much agree. Kind of like you said, whenever I watch older movies, I have a huge respect for what they did at the time, whether it's, how the movie was created or what it meant for the excuse me, the theater industry at the time. So like you said, this one hugely influential. Also, like you said, never really a big Superman person. Henry Cavill's Man of Steel, I think, is an awesome movie and really made me like Superman more. So, a lot of dittos. I will say, and I go back and forth, and I feel like I need to rewatch the movies because I haven't seen them since I was a kid. I don't know if I prefer Gene Hackman Luthor or Kevin Spacey Luthor more. I think I need to rewatch to get a really good idea of which one I prefer. Because kind of like when people debate their favorite Joker, I think both of them play it so well. And even if you want to throw Eisenberg in there, they all play Luthor very differently. And it's one of those like I said, everybody knows their favorite Joker. I've never really thought about my favorite Luthor, and I got asked that the other day, and it threw me for a tizzy. But yeah, that's kind of pretty much just exactly what you said. I don't know. I've never ranked superhero movies, so I don't know for sure if I'd put it top 30. I feel like there hasn't been enough superhero movies for me to not put it top 30, but I could just be very wrong. I guess there's been almost 30 MCU movies. That's a blatant lie. But
I
I
was gonna
don't know
say,
if I've seen all of them.
Between all the Spider-Man and the X-Men and the MCU and DC, it's definitely over definitely over 50, 60.
Yeah, no, I totally forgot that the MCU is still a thing, so that one's on me. um, the next movie is Tim Burton's live action Alice in Wonderland.
I have not seen that.
Interesting. Okay. I
I'm
feel
not a
like
big
you
Tim
need.
Burton fan.
That's right. I forgot. You're not a big Tim Burton fan. I feel so. I don't know if this was the same for you. So you know how when Avatar came out, Blue People, it was like the big go and see it in 3D kind of thing because of what it was doing at the time with the technology.
Huh.
So when Alice in Wonderland came out, it was specifically designed to optimize IMAX. So it's the only movie I've ever seen in IMAX. And I've never rewatched the movie, so I don't know for sure. But I really feel like my opinion on that movie is elevated because it was so good in IMAX. Like it was to this day is one of the greatest like theater viewings I've ever had of a movie. It was just that good. So I don't know for sure, but that's where I stand on that. Um, the next one is Inglorious Bastards.
Hey, I have definitely seen that one. I'm a big fan. I'm a big Quentin Tarantino fan. I wouldn't necessarily say he's like one of my top directors, like a top five. Well, we did do a top five and he wasn't there, so he's definitely not a top five. But he's definitely up there as definitely, I think, um, I would say one of the most talented directors working right now, one of the most creative directors working right now. He definitely has the talent and the heart and the skill, and I think all of that is sort of on display here with Inglorious Bastards. This is in my top five favorite Tarantino movies. Um, I love the characters. I think everyone does a great job. I mean, this was the introduction to um, Christoph Waltz, who is an incredible villain as Hans Landa, and he really launched him on the scene. And I think even since this is definitely his best performance, and that Oscar was very well deserved. Um, that whole opening scene in the farm, it's just brilliant. Like Tarantino is one of those people, like one of my pet peeves with directors and writers is when you can tell they think they're being clever, but it's just not coming across as clever as you would as they think it is. Tarantino is one of those directors where he thinks he's being clever and he is being clever. Like you can't deny his writing and how he just sculpts a scene is just impeccable. And so I think that opening sequence is absolutely brilliant. Probably the best scene Tarantino's ever written and directed. It's just done so well. But yeah, this is just it's so weird to call like a World War II Nazi killing movie fun, but it kind of has a fun, like one of those like it's like a Tarantino fun energy where it's just um hyper violent, very um, outlandish characters, and it's just a fun, bloody, R-rated Tarantino time. And so this is one of those where it's like I feel like really out of all of his filmography, if there was one movie that you had to show someone to tell you what his style was, I think in many ways this actually might be the most effective movie at doing that.
Yeah, it's as you know, I'm not a Tarantino fan. This is one of the few of his movies I actually like, so take that as you will. Also, what do you mean? Of course, it's fun to watch a movie about killing Nazis. um, but yeah, the pretty much everything you said, although take it down like a slight notch, just because I don't like Tarantino. So I don't know. It's interesting because my like Eli Roth, Robert Rodriguez, and a couple other people are heavily inspired by Tarantino. They're like huge fans of his. It's almost like they're like in sports. There's coaching trees where like certain people will learn from a coach, then they'll go out to other teams, and then they'll do great and whatever. And so like it's almost like this is a directing tree. And I love Roth and I love Rodriguez. That was my one and two in directors, and then I don't like Tarantino, and that's like their like their mentor. So it's kind of funny to me that I don't really like the person who I don't want to say trained them, but who helped sculpt their identities, and yet I like them as people and directors. I don't know. Take that as you will, but nonetheless, Inglorious Bastards is one of the few that I do like. Like you said, it's just fun. It's funny, and it's definitely R-rated.
It's very much so. Um, yeah, I like this one.
Ironically, I know you haven't seen it, but when I was randomizing, Mortal Engines came up, so that was kind of funny. Have you seen 10 Things I Hate About You?
I have seen 10 Things I Hate About You
All right,
a
let's do
long
that.
time ago. But I distinctly remember it. It was actually my senior year English class in high school. We watched this at the end of the year because we had just done a Shakespeare unit and we had done Taming of the Shrew.
Mm.
Which this is like a live action modern adaptation of. So I don't remember it too much, so I can't comment on it too much, but I remember enough to know that obviously Heath Ledger was great, and it's kind of my really only exposure to Heath Ledger for the longest time was the Joker. And so
Mhm.
it was weird to see him in what he was really known for before that, which was like rom-coms basically. So it was really interesting to see him act as that, knowing he's the Joker. And he was great, of course. He was a great actor, especially great in rom-coms. And seeing a young, future Robin, Joseph Gordon-Levitt there,
Yeah, this was literally
was
the
also great.
audition for Batman.
Right, exactly. They had a great energy. They had a great relationship. The main girl, I can't remember her name. She's in the Bourne movies. What's her name? The
Julia
girl, like
Stiles.
that. Julia Stiles. Yes, I remember thinking that she was very attractive, and that's what I thought at the moment. Um, when
So
I was
you
watching it
like
for
the
the first
scene
time.
where she flashes her boobs to get Heath Ledger out of detention.
Yes, very much. Yeah, 10 out of 10 movie for that reason alone. Um, but yeah, no, I just remember this being a pretty good rom, kind of like a rom. It's more of a rom dram, if I remember correctly, right?
No, it's
Not,
definitely a rom-com. Like
is it?
you could say
Okay.
rom dramedy, I guess. The whole thing is very comedic. the drama is your standard drama in a rom-com where it just comes to
Okay.
the classic peak between act 2 and act 3, and then it has to get resolved. So I wouldn't say it leans too heavily into the drama.
Okay. I guess I just remembered some of the more serious parts in my mind. But yeah, so honestly, really not something I can talk much about, but I remember it enough to know that the performances were at least great.
Okay, that's totally fair. We did our favorite movies every year we were born for horror. However, in a past life, we did one for all-encompassing genre, and this was my favorite of '99. I absolutely love this movie. I've probably seen it like 100 times, and that's partly because as a kid, my parents loved it, so they'd play it, so I'd watch it, and it's just a whole thing. But yeah, I don't really. It's ironic. I don't really like rom coms, but this is one of the ones I really do. I really enjoy it. I ironically have never read Taming of the Shrew. I've known it's based off of that for ages, but I think I just like the modern version better. I don't know. Uh, the excuse me, classic Heath Ledger singing Jersey Boys on the bleachers is like one of my favorite scenes in a movie. I would say maybe top like 30 as if I'm trying to be safe before I dig myself a hole. But yeah, this is just, like you said, Heath Ledger at like his peak. He's awesome. Ironically, there's not a lot of movies that I've seen him in where I didn't like him. I think he's just a really good actor. R.I.P. And then of course, young Joseph Gordon-Levitt is great. And yeah, this is just to be one of the few rom-coms I can say I enjoy.
There you go.
Have you seen Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure?
I have not seen any of the Bill and Ted movies.
Dude, I was hoping that you'd at least seen the first one, but not the sequels. Okay. Have you seen Traffic?
No, I have not.
Okay, I know you've seen Glass, so we'll do that one.
Okay. Glass. Yeah. Um, Believe it or not, funnily enough, I actually was planning on rewatching this very soon because I was gonna show my girlfriend wanted to watch Split. And so I was gonna not spoil it for her, but be like, hey, let's watch this other movie, Unbreakable, before we watch Split, and let's see where that goes. Um, and so we'll probably watch Glass after that. But this is a movie that I only saw it so far the one time when it came out in theaters back in 2019, so it's been a minute. I'm a huge fan of Unbreakable. That might be my favorite Shyamalan movie. And I think that is my favorite Shyamalan movie. A huge fan of Split. That's also up there, definitely top five Shyamalan for me, maybe even top three. And of course, this is like the culmination. I remember in the theater liking it, but not nearly as much as I thought I would. I think it was notoriously Shyamalan personally funded it. He put up 20 million of his own dollars, and I feel like you could tell that it's budgetary concerns that the story had to suffer because it kind of sets itself up as having these big ambitions and these big payoffs, and then the actual payoffs are incredibly disappointing and underwhelming. And so I feel like if this movie had been given a bigger budget and had been given more to work with, it definitely could have been much more ambitious and actually hit a lot harder. But biggest of that trilogy, and I don't remember disliking it. I just remember feeling a little or not even a little. I just remember feeling underwhelmed.
Yeah, I would say I agree, but for slightly different reasons. So I'm not an M Night Shyamalan fan. However, I will say surprisingly, I actually did like Split. That's why I was excited for Glass. After watching Split, I then watched Unbreakable. A lot of people had told me growing up that they thought I'd really like that movie, so maybe it's because the bar was set too high. But for me, I personally didn't like that one. I would say it was just relatively underwhelming in my personal opinion. And then I watched Glass, and I would say it pretty much just followed suit. Um, yeah, I don't know. That was when I was get to the point where I was trying to. I didn't like Shyamalan growing up. I saw Split. He kind of won me back, and then Glass kind of lost me again. And I don't think I've actually watched a Shyamalan movie since, if I'm not mistaken. I know I didn't see Old. I didn't see Knock at the Cabin. I don't know if he's done other stuff. But yeah, so this one was relatively underwhelming. I don't want to say it was bad. Maybe forgettable is the right word. Like I'd give it maybe a 2.5 out of 5, and then just kind of leave it at that.
Yeah, I will say I kind of envy the times when like Split came out because it was like free before the internet spoiled everything. Because I was a huge fan of Unbreakable, and there was absolutely no concept in my mind that these movies were linked at all until when they get the final reveal of Bruce Willis and he name drops Mr. Glass. Like that was maybe it might genuinely be like one of the last moments in a movie where I was like completely unaware of something like that because now ever since then everything gets spoiled ahead of time, everything gets teased, everything gets rumored. That was completely out of the blue for me. So I was so unbelievably excited in the theater and so hype that like he was building this like cinematic universe. And then that was part of why Glass kind of fell a little short because I didn't feel like it really went as far as it should have.
That's actually a really interesting point. If I'm not mistaken, with the Marvels, didn't it get spoiled like 3 months beforehand or something that Beast was going to be the post-credit scene?
Yeah. That had been on the internet for a long time.
Okay, let's see here. Split 26. Okay, so I was off by a year. So yeah, I guess that would. I was never really on the internet at that point, so I don't know if I was gonna have stuff spoiled, even if it did exist. But that's a yeah, that's a really interesting point. That yeah, I don't. I have no idea what mine would be, where it was just like such a crazy like ending or like shock value that wasn't spoiled. I'd have to think about that one, but that I like that. That's a good point.
And
Um,
Split was where I first fell in love with Anya Taylor-Joy. So
I should have asked that question. Um, so ironically, we randomized to one that you have covered on the podcast before, and in the same vein as Glass, it is Devil.
Devil, okay. I'm always down to talk more Devil. This was one of my favorite supernatural movies when we covered that. Supernatural being my least favorite horror subgenre, and this being one of my favorites of that least favorite subgenre. Devil's a great movie. Most people think it's directed by M. Night. It's not. It's produced by M. Night. Um, but if it was an M. Night movie, I think it would be my favorite. Maybe beating Unbreakable, but at least close. Yeah, just really, really good story. Pretty original story. I love bottle stories. For the most part, it is a bottle story. It's got some really good scares. It kind of does some interesting things with the lore, sort of like this like Christian demon angel lore sort of going on. Um, I love Logan Marshall Green, one of the most underrated actors of our time. He's great in this. He's never hardly a leading man, and in this, he's kind of one of the leading men. So I'm glad to see him sort of front and center there. Chris Messina is great as always, as well. Yeah, it's just really cool concept, cool bottle story. Got some good scares, got some good lore. What's not to love?
Yeah, just kind of copying what we said on that pod. I agree. I thought this was a Shyamalan movie until you informed me it was not. So I would say this is one of the few Shyamalan movies I actually like, but technically speaking, anyway, I agree. When it comes to bottle stories, this is definitely up there. It's a really good one. It's a fun watch. So yeah, I would pretty much just say ditto. I can already tell you this is going to be high on my end of podcast rankings. Um, the
I
next,
mine as
oh
well.
sorry, the next movie, we can kind of speed run this one because I'm pretty sure you despise this movie. It is Escape from L.A.
Okay, I ranted about Escape from New York. I never saw Escape from LA because I didn't like Escape from New York so
Ah,
much.
okay, all right. Let me move that one off the list. Okay, so then, okay, that's interesting. I did not remember that. So this is actually a good question that I'll ask you to kind of fill the void. When you watch a movie, if you what's the level of interest you have to have at the end of the first one to decide if you'll watch the sequels or not?
Uh, that's a good question. How do you measure like interest, I guess,
So
would be
like
my question.
for me, uh, uh, Escape from New York wasn't my favorite action movie. Like as you know, I love 80s action movies. Escape from New York, like I get it. I get why it was popular, but it wasn't my favorite. But I still watched Escape from LA because like I wanted to be able to say I saw both. There's a lot of horror movies where, like as an example, the Friday the 13th or Halloween, Freddy even, like as you know, you don't want to watch past three, but I did just because I wanted to be able to say that I watched them all, or like I enjoyed Freddy enough as a character, so to speak. Like, maybe it's more of a completionist mindset, is what I'm trying to ask. Like, do you have the ability to stop yourself?
I tend to have a completionist mindset if it's like, at least for the Halloween movies, it was because I liked some of the later ones or knew I would, like the 2018 one or the Rob Zombie one, so it made me want to complete the middle because I didn't wanna just do the beginning and the end.
Hmm.
When it's something like Escape from New York and there's just the one and then the sequel, and I didn't like the one, I didn't really feel as much of that completionist pressure to push through, if that makes sense, because I knew there was nothing on the other side.
Okay, okay.
I guess for me, just in movies in general, I'm like a character first kind of guy. So it's
Hmm.
like for me, when I watch a movie and I know there's sequels, it's like, do I care enough about this character or am I interested enough in this character to follow them on another journey? And also the world building, not like big mythic legendary world building, but just like the context. Like, is there more in this world that they've sort of set up that I would like to see more of? And that could be on a small scale. It doesn't even have to be like a sci-fi horror fantasy. It could be like just a regular drama. Would I like to see a sequel? Like, is there more with those characters? And is there more that they've set up here that I'd be interested to see another situation happen with like the rules that they've established or like how what this universe is or what's happened to this character? So I guess those are like the two main things.
Okay, that makes sense. So two follow-ups. One, I would say I pretty much agree. Though I will say that I think I put world building above character, and I know this is gonna sound weird. There have been movies I watched where the lead wasn't great, but the surrounding character, or I should say supporting cast, the lore that was built was awesome, and it really made me so like I'll use Predators as an example. Adrian Brody's my least favorite part of that movie. But I personally put Predators probably in my top 20 movies of all time. I would love a sequel to that movie. I would love for them to explore more with the lore of that, even though I didn't like Adrian Brody, just as like an example. So that was the one thing I wanted to say. And then two, if you were rewatching the MCU and you knew that you had to go from Iron Man all the way to Endgame, would you still watch Thor Ragnarok?
So Thor, uh, it kind of you kind of have to watch Infinity War. So I guess my arms would be tied. I could
Uh,
manage. I could,
let's say you can just make yourself go legally blind for like 2 hours.
although I'll be completely honest, I really think in retrospect, I probably wouldn't have watched most of the Phase 4, Phase 5 movies, having known what they were going to be like.
So what you're saying is I was good for jumping ship after Endgame.
Yeah, pretty much. Aside from No Way Home, which you did see, but
Yeah, I had to. Well,
yeah,
once it going back to what you said earlier with Split. Once it was leaked that Toby and Andrew were coming back, I had to. It got button seat.
exactly.
Have you seen Undercover Brother?
Mm-mm, never heard of that.
Okay, I like that movie. Have you seen Pitch Perfect 3?
I have.
Okay, this is
So,
so random. Okay, I'm sorry. I know that was the point, but the fact that Pitch Perfect 3 just came up just made me laugh.
they were going to be like, all right, what's better, Batman Begins or like the Grinch or Pitch Perfect 3? Um, yeah, so I watched the Pitch Perfect trilogy for the first time. I think it was during quarantine. There was just a period of quarantine in 2020, like that first spring and summer, where I was just like, all right, let me just watch all these movies that I've never seen, which I feel like most people probably were the same way. And Pitch Perfect was one of those. So I watched through the Pitch Perfect trilogy. I really liked the first one. I really think that's a genuinely good movie. Two was it was all right. It was a little not as good as the first one. Three, this is what I think of three. I think 3 has some of the best moments of the trilogy. Like, the riff off is easily the best. I think the final performance is easily the best, but the story itself just doesn't work on any level. It's like trying to make it like a spy espionage comedy thing, and like they're overseas and they're trying to stop Rebel Wilson's evil dad, John Lithgow, from doing criminal activities, and it's like they have to use their acapella abilities to like it's like what are we doing here? This is getting way like way out of line. And so yeah, the story and the script just really didn't work for me. But I think some of the individual moments, especially the singing, which at the end of the day, you can be like, I'm just here for some laughs and singing. I think the singing parts were some of the best in here. And I'm also in love with Haley Steinfeld, so
I knew that was
having her
coming.
front and center here, having her front and center here was obviously a good thing. So
And that is why Bumblebee is your favorite movie of all time.
all time.
Um, I would say I pretty much agree. So the way I look at it is, for me personally, if you're going off of story or let's just say like objectively best movie, I think one's the best, then two, then three. However, I think the riff offs get better as they go. So like the first one is third, then the second one's second, the third one's the best. So fun fact, I have all the riff offs memorized. I can do them from start to finish. And the third one is by far my favorite. I think it's the best. I like that they start to finally, like, I know one of the themes with the third one is that they're playing around with non-acapella with the different insertions of other music genres and whatnot. So like maybe there's some bias in there, I don't know, but I think the third riff off's the best. It's also the longest. It's got like the most in it. I don't actually really. So if I remember correctly, one of the main reasons why I didn't like the third one is because the troublemakers just aren't in it. If I remember correctly, isn't there like some excuse to where they like don't show up because they're not invited to like the military group or whatever? Like right? You've seen it more recently than me. Aren't the troublemakers not in it at all?
That's the boy part, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, they're not in it at all.
that's what
Like
I thought. Okay,
Becca, or is it Bella? No, what's the
Becca.
main girl's name?
Yeah, Becca.
Oh, it is Becca. They're the
Yeah,
Bellas. Becca is her
yeah.
name. Um,
Pardon, Bellas.
Becca,
I know way too
yes.
much about these movies.
Becca like breaks up with the boyfriend character like off screen, and like Dear Evan Hansen guy is not in it either. And like, yeah, the troublemaker, and what's his name? The
Bumper.
Divine.
Yeah, Adam.
What's his name? Adam
Bumper.
Devine isn't in it
Yeah.
either. Bumper, yeah, he's not in it. And then like a lot of the girls didn't come back too. So I don't know what happened behind the scenes. Like if
Most of
there
them said
was,
we don't need a third movie. I remember there was a lot of development issues with this one trying to get it made. What's interesting is, if you didn't know this, they ended up making a fourth Pitch Perfect movie. It's a spin-off where Bumper's in like London or something, and it only has Bumper, and it's him like experiencing punk music or something like that. I didn't watch it.
I've heard that. I've heard of that. Yeah, this was back when Hollywood was trying to make Ruby Rose happen, and I feel like Ruby Rose has like fallen off the face of the planet.
Well, it's interesting, and this could be a topic for another time. You are 100% correct. There was a stretch where for like 3 or 4 years she was just in everything. But it's really interesting where you could like they wanted it to happen, but then she was doing everything in her power not on screen to make people just not like her. And it's like, who wins? I don't know. That's very interesting to kind of think about. But anyway, yeah, the first movie I've seen a million times. It's not one of my favorites, but when I was a kid, I did theater, and so this was like one of my favorite movies. So take that as you will. So maybe because I got older is why I didn't like two and three. I don't know, but I still think the third one has the best riff off.
Yeah, completely.
Um,
I still listen to like the riff off on like Spotify because I think it's that good.
There you go. We agree on that one. The next one is Mr. Harrigan's Phone.
I have not seen that. That's a pretty new one. I'm surprised that came out like last year.
Did it only come out last
Just,
year? Wow, I feel like
I
I'm
think
old.
so. It
Have
was a
you?
Stephen King adaptation on Netflix.
Yeah, that was with the dude from It. I thought you had seen that one. Sorry. Have you seen Escape Plan?
Escape Plan. No, I've seen Escape Room, not Escape Plan.
Did you see Songbird?
No, I did. I know you liked that one, but I did not see that
Yeah,
one.
that one's definitely. I will. I don't know if it's one of my favorite movies ever, but I will definitely die on the hill that it's nowhere close to as bad as people say. Okay. Have you seen You Don't Mess with the Zohan?
I've seen maybe clips, but never the full thing. I'm
Okay.
not a
Okay.
big Adam Sandler fan. That's another hot take. I don't find Will Ferrell all day. I am not an Adam Sandler fan that much.
And see, it's funny. I don't like all of his movies. I know he's like the definition of the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. Some of his movies are like the worst ever made, but I would take Adam Sandler over Will Ferrell, so I am in that camp. I want to hit a perfect even number, so we're gonna do our 15th movie and finish with Army of the Dead because I know you've seen that one.
Okay. All right. I have. Um, sorry, I'm just writing it down. Yeah, Army of the Dead. I really enjoyed it. A lot of people really didn't. I've gone on record being a Zack Snyder shill, and yeah, I it might be because this hit in like early 2021, so it was still like COVID time, like movies weren't really coming out yet. The ones that did weren't very good, and so like it hit Netflix, so maybe it was just me starving for like a really solid movie. But I thought this was like a blast. Like the cast was great. It has the iconic Zack Snyder action with zombies, which is like what more would you want when you have the visual mind behind the battle sequences of 300 having them fight zombies. Um, and it has such a really cool lore, and there's so much to that universe that I know that there's a sequel coming called Planet of the Dead, but there's so much that's just so clever behind it where you have to watch these YouTube videos and there's like so many unanswered questions like what's the deal with that? How is that the way it is? Is this that? Is this connected to that? So it just teases this big universe out there and there's so much to explore and I'm really excited to explore that. Um, but yeah, Dave Batista was great. The rest of this cast was great. Great action. Love me some zombie stuff. I'm not as into zombies as I used to be, but I still love a good zombie film, especially an action film at this level. And I love lore and world building, so this definitely delivered there.
Interesting. Did you see Army of Thieves?
I didn't, but I wanted to, but it really did not. It made barely any splash when it dropped.
Yeah, no, that was that guy, I forget his name in the movie. He was my favorite part of the movie. I thought he was hilarious, so I really wanted to watch it, but kind of I don't know why. But kind of like what you just said, it I wanted to, but then just never did. Um this so Army of the Dead once again could be because I got my hopes, like I set the bar all the way high. Um I watched this and I just remember being very underwhelmed. I do remember, excuse me, agreeing with you about how there was a lot of cool lore and it would be cool to explore, but at least to me, the story was relatively like cut and dry. Like it there wasn't anything necessarily that wowed me, so to speak. I thought the actors were fine, but none of the characters really wowed me. Like I said, the only guy I really remember is the dude who's in Army of Thieves. And maybe it would be deserved a rewatch, but from what I remember, I just remember being very underwhelmed after watching it. Um, yeah, it could be because I'm not that into zombies. I don't know. I think I was like really riding the Zack Snyder high, and then maybe I set the bar too high. I'm not 100% sure on that one. um, I I'm trying to remember. I'm like 92% sure I actually like reviewed this on Letterboxd. I'm trying to look and see if I gave it a what I gave it.
I know
Yeah,
I gave it a 4 out of 5.
I gave it a 2 out of 5. So I guess I really didn't like it. I don't remember it really. Like I'm trying to think about it right now. I remember certain scenes. I remember Garrett Dillahunt being a terrible human as he always plays in stuff, and that's about it. Like I guess it's not memorable to me, which it sounds bad, but I really just don't. Maybe it's worth a rewatch, but I guess I gave it a 2 out of 5 when I watched it.
Here's how much of a Zack Snyder shill I am. I gave this a 4 out of 5. I just said all the good things I said about it, and it's my third least favorite Zack Snyder film. It is third from the bottom, and it's a 4 out of 5.
What are the bottom two, if you don't mind me asking? Oh wait, I'm sure
Uh,
the one that just came out is the worst, right?
oh, Rebel Moon. Oh, okay. I forgot Rebel Moon came out. Okay, it is fourth from the bottom.
So what are your bottom
I
three?
think
Just out of curiosity.
I believe Sucker Punch is my least favorite,
Okay.
then Rebel Moon, and then Out Legend of the Guardians, Owls of Gahul.
Okay. That's I always forget he did that movie. Okay. Okay.
Honestly, Rebel Moon might be higher than Legends of the Guardians just because I don't know. I guess there's something I can enjoy about it more. But I just liked Army of the Dead and Planet of the Dead got announced, but honestly, I haven't heard anything about it, and it seems like he's been so preoccupied with Rebel Moon, and I'm just like, just please scrap Rebel Moon and make as many of these Dead movies as possible.
It really is interesting. I've noticed this as so growing up, I kind of followed stuff here or there, but I wasn't as into following the news and whatnot as we are now, especially when you fill me in on stuff or I just go on random Google searches. And to your point, it's not like it was as popular when we were younger. But it is really interesting how, like, as an example, James Cameron decided he wasn't going to make anything and just chill in his house all day and write Avatar sequels. And so it's interesting where, like, you get these creative minds who, I don't want to say have shiny squirrel syndrome, but like you said, there was something there with Army of the Dead, and he could have done more with that. But then he was like, but what if I make a Star Wars epic? And then he just kind of went to go do that. And then, shiny squirrel, will he ever return to Army of the Dead? I don't know. Does he?
And there's just so much cool in it. Like, one of the things is like there's the possibility that they're caught in a time loop is like one of the things because when they go to the safe, there's like charred bodies and it's like wearing their clothes. And one of the characters points out that it looks like them. And so there's like instances, so it's like they're teasing that they could be caught in like a time travel loop. And there's one point where it's super like blink and you miss it. You have to like watch it specifically because it's not even in frame. The characters are just lighting up some of the zombies, and one of the zombies, his face gets blown off, but he's like a robot underneath. You can
I
like
remember
very
that. Yeah.
clearly see you can very clearly see the like skin or whatever gets wiped off, but he's like a blue, like glowing blue robot. And it's like, well, what's that about? Are these zombies robots? Like what? And there's also evidence of like alien invasion because of like there's like certain Easter eggs that like aliens caused the zombie virus and they're still there and like all this stuff. And it's like there's so much to this universe.
I just remember isn't there a pregnant zombie?
Yeah, there's it's like they're reproducing.
Okay, yeah, yeah. I remember that. Well, most of the stuff I watched was people trying to dissect how a zombie gets pregnant.
But just like all that stuff, like time loops, aliens, robots, like what is going on here? It just really begged all those questions. And so I just hope that universe can get like flushed out.
It is interesting because I remember hearing people talk about that, but they did not talk about it as optimistically as you are. They were talking about it as what the heck is Snyder doing? Does he even know anymore?
Now, see, I thought it was just like a bunch of cool Easter eggs, but I'm a Snyder shill, so what do I know?
Okay, okay. Well, that puts us at an even 15. Have you been ranking along the way, or do you need a second to kind of put your stuff in a ranking?
I've been soft ranking, but I might need a second just to formalize this.
Okay, no worries. Um, I have been I think I was kind of peeking at this. I think mine is pretty much good to go. I'll go ahead and start off by kind of saying how I did my rankings. So to stick with the chaos, there was no agreed upon way to do the rankings for me personally. I assumed we were going with a general like worst to best, and the way that I am quantifying that is of the movies we talked about, which would I be most likely to watch tonight if given the opportunity? And so I ranked them not necessarily by objectively speaking, which is the best made or has the best script or good character development, whatever. I did, if I was to chill later, which one am I sitting down and watching? And so that's kind of how I judged best to worst.
That's fair. That's kind of how I'm judging on this right now.
Do you want me to start while you finish off your list?
Sure. Yeah, I'll just need a second to write it out.
Okay, no worries. So, going from my 15 to 1, I have the Grand Budapest Hotel at 15. Shocker. Then I put The Hunger Games. Then The Ring. Anchorman, Legend of Ron Burgundy. Then Superman 2. Glass. Inglorious Bastards. Dr. Seuss's How the Grinch Stole Christmas. Spider Man Homecoming. Army of the Dead, which you'll be happy that one came in at 6. The only time this movie will be coming in top 5, Pitch Perfect 3. Actually, now that I say that, I think I would put Pitch Perfect 3 under Army of the Dead, because now you've got me interested to rewatch it, so I'm just gonna change that real quick. Sticking with our chaos theme. So actually at number 6 is Pitch Perfect 3. At number 5, I'm going to go with Army of the Dead. Maybe I would give that a rewatch. And then the top 4 are the movies that like I truly actually enjoy. I can say I'd give them a 3-star or higher sort of review. Devil, 10 Things I Hate About You, Dracula Untold, and then Batman Begins. It was really tough for me to pick 1 and 2 because, like I said, there's a difference between fun and good. And to me, Batman Begins is like an actual good movie. But Dracula Untold is also a really fun movie. And actually, I'm going to put Dracula Untold at number 1. And here's why. So I said I'm going to rank these based off of what I'd be most willing to watch tonight. And as I said earlier, in my personal opinion, you can only enjoy the Dark Knight trilogy when you sit down and binge all 8.5 hours together at once. So I would be incapable of watching Batman Begins by itself. So I'm going to put Dracula Untold at number 1, especially because it's nighttime. I'd rather have something fun to chill my brain out. And so I think this is probably the only time I would ever do this. Well, maybe not. I need to rewatch the movie, but I've seen it like 10 times. I'm going to put Dracula Untold at number 1 and put Batman Begins at number 2. All right. Slam the door shut. Final answer. No deal.
Right. Yeah, so it's so weird, and that's why I like doing this. It's so weird to like rank these together and say like one's better than the other. But yeah, I'm going off of like yeah, what you said pretty much is watchability, at least right now. So my number 15 is also Grand Budapest Hotel. Number 14, How the Grinch Stole Christmas. Number 13, 10 Things I Hate About You. 12, The Ring. 11, Pitch Perfect 3. 10, The Hunger Games. 9, Superman 2. 8, Dracula Untold. 7, Anchorman. 6, Glass. 5, Army of the Dead. 4, Spider-Man Homecoming. 3, Devil. 2, Batman Begins. 1, Inglourious Bastards.
So I will just point out our 2, Batman Begins, is the same. Our 5, Army of the Dead, is the same. And our 15, The Grand Budapest Hotel, is the same. I didn't think we'd have anything the same. So, 3 for 15. That's pretty cool.
No. Um,
The-
yeah, this was just weird to rank, but I liked it. It was like weird in a good way.
I truly just wanted to embrace the chaos, so thank you for doing this with me. Hopefully our listeners enjoyed. A couple highlights. I think my 10 Things I Hate About You I have in the top 3. You had it much lower, and then for yours, you had Inglourious Bastards 1, and I had it at 9. Those are probably the 2 biggest differences. The other movies we actually ranked relatively close together, which is kind of interesting.
I I thought that was interesting too, but yeah, I think I think Inglorious Bastards might be our biggest split.
Yeah, that either that or did you have Dracula Untold at 9?
I had it at 8.
Okay, then yeah. So because my number 1 you have at 8, my number 9 you have at 1. So those actually are pretty. Yeah. The
There you
All
go.
right. Well, did you have anything else that you wanted to say? Any closing statements now that you kind of see the whole list, see all the movies in front of you? Such a weird list.
I mean, really, I like pretty much all these movies except for maybe Grand Budapest Hotel. I would give every movie but that on this list a positive review. However,
Yeah.
positive for me starts at like 2.5 to 3 out of 5
No, I would
for me
definitely.
personally.
I would feel comfortable, even though I already said I gave Army of the Dead a 2. I would feel comfortable saying I could give all of these movies a 2.5 out of 5 or higher. I didn't even bother looking what I gave Anchorman Legend of Ron Burgundy, but I remember it having redeemable qualities, so I'm sure I didn't rank it too low. I like never give out 1 stars. I try not to be too harsh. But on the flip side, I rarely ever give out 5 stars, so take that as you will with my ranking system. But yeah, I think I would
Yeah.
agree, except for Grand Budapest Hotel, we didn't get any movies that I've seen that are absolute duds in my opinion that I just really didn't like, more or less just underwhelming.
I completely agree. That's the one I would give probably a negative review to.
Well, faithful listeners, hopefully you enjoyed. If you would like to see us do this again, please let us know in the comments below. We can mix it up, do it with some specific genres, do it with some specific decades. The AI internet is, I don't know why I just said that. AI is awesome, and there's many things on the internet that allow us to do stuff like this, and we're going to have a lot more fun in the future. Thank y'all for listening, and have a good night.